That, I will turn it over to Reed.
Good to have everyone today. Thanks, Ryan, for the introduction. So today we're going to be talking about mobile device management for Office 365. This is a new service that Microsoft has just begun to roll out for customers, but it's based on a platform that we've actually been a part of for years. So we're going to go over what's included with the service, why it would be useful for your organization, and then I'm actually going to walk through the end user facing experience of leveraging a service like MDM for 365. So a lot of items to cover. Let's get the ball rolling. So where I'd like to start is a couple of statistics before I dive right into the product to show how Microsoft
You will now be placed into conference.
envisioned
To mute your line, press star 6. To unmute, press pound 6.
Apologies for that. How Microsoft really envisioned this solution for organizations, and just four numbers to share with you before we dive into a list of features and the demonstration of what it's capable of doing. The first is that fully half of employers by 2017, which it seems like a futuristic number, but it's only 2 years away. Fully half of employers will require employees to supply their own devices for the purposes of doing their work, which is a There we go. Sorry about that, folks. Can you guys hear me now?
Reed, I can hear you now.
Okay, great. Perfect. Apologies for that. So moving forward, when you think about the total amount of organizations that are out there that are supporting these types of devices, whether it's cell phone form factors or small tablets or iPads or Surfaces, fully 90% of enterprises expect that they're going to be supporting not a single platform, but a diverse platform moving forward. Even as recently as a year or two ago, I think a lot of organizations said, well, we're going to standardize on one platform. And what they found was that most of those organizations unfortunately had people running around with the latest iPhones or the latest Galaxy phones or now the latest Surface tablets that are out there and really had to adjust their positioning in order to accommodate those staff members. One of the other concerns of all of these individuals using unsupported devices is that often they're violating their own IT policies. People are frustrated and they want to get their job done, and if their own IT policy says you have to use a corporate machine because we control it and we have access to it, the net result may be that individuals go ahead and go to their local big box store and pick up the latest iPad. They pick up a Surface Pro. They pick up a Samsung Galaxy Tab, and they say, look, this is the latest and greatest. If my IT organization won't support me on it, I'm just going to go ahead and hook it in and use it myself. And the miss there is not that they can't do their job. The miss is that ultimately that particular device is not going to be protected as efficiently as a device that you have your hands around and can control. The final number I'll leave you with is it extends beyond the device landscape to websites, things like software as a service. Those sorts of sites and locations people are using all the time on varying different types of devices, and they're admitting it. They're saying, hey, look, we know that this isn't something that IT controls, but ultimately it doesn't matter. I need it to do my job. And when you think about that landscape of having to manage not only the devices, but the places they're going on those devices, it just becomes a daunting task for most of the organizations that we speak to that honestly are having trouble just getting email onto these devices. So what is MDM for Office 365? So the mobile device management play that Microsoft has built is a little bit different than some of the other vendors in the space. And I like to think of it in three broad categories. So it allows you to do things like conditional access, to say, based on these policies and rights, we're going to give you access to your email and your documents and so forth. It lets you do a level of device management, whether it's an iOS, an Android, or a Windows device. It lets you get in there, set some security policies, make sure things are configured the way that you would want to, make sure that you can do simple tasks like see who's in compliance and not in compliance. And finally, it allows you the ability to do what's known as selective wipe. So in the past, many organizations used a technology called ActiveSync to manage mobile devices. It gave you basic levels of functionality. You could set a PIN policy and you could wipe it. But when you wiped the device with ActiveSync, it wiped the entire device. It was an all or nothing affair. And the negative of that all wipe, that full wipe, was that individuals often chose not to enroll their devices with ActiveSync because they believed correctly that if IT had the ability to wipe their device, they might lose access to their pictures. They might lose access to their contacts. They might lose access to critical bits of data that they had been keeping solely on their phone. Now, with Selective Wipe, instead of having that all or nothing approach, effectively you can say that the IT team, when someone departs or leaves or moves on, can wipe all of the corporate data without impacting any of that traditional personal data that's also contained on the device itself. So all three of those functions are in the mobile device management, the SKU that Microsoft has released for customers. Great products. Probably 90% of what organizations need to do is contained within those three pillars. There are, however, some additional functions that aren't in the MDM solution. So today I'm going to talk about what MDM is capable of, and I'm also going to reference some of the functions in the Microsoft Intune platform, which is ultimately the platform that provides all of these mobile device management features. If you were on a Microsoft Intune today, you would already have the ability to do all of this. And have had the ability to do this for a couple years now to be able to manage these devices. But Intune goes beyond the traditional MDM approach in the 365 offering to give you the ability to control the applications and the data within them themselves. So what I'd like to do once we go into the show and tell portion of this discussion is actually show off what those differences are. Because we talk to customers every week who say, well, I'm thinking about Microsoft Intune, but I love the fact that MDM for Office 365 is included in the cost of 365. Do I really need Intune? Can I get away with just the capabilities in 365? And what if I change my mind down the road? Is that something that ultimately I'll be able to shift at some point in the future? So we'll walk through all of the different components of the MDM suite. We'll cover some of the application management items that can only be found if you choose to go up to Microsoft Intune. And keep in mind, all of these different features are designed around your employees first and foremost. And that has historically been the big difference with Intune, has been rather than saying that Microsoft is going to throw 5,000 features at you, and make it very targeted towards the IT department, that instead they want people to adopt this solution and find it useful. And the only way they could do that would be if they prioritized the end user experience such that people aren't having to use a new novel app that they've never used before to manage their email or their contacts or their documents. Instead, with MDM for 365, your staff can continue using those first-party applications, especially the Office suite, and not have to back into some kludgy-looking manager to go in and edit documents or to browse the web or what have you. So we'll go over what that difference looks like. So we're going to start with conditional access because this is far and away the number one request that firms have when they come to us and are looking to have some level of mobile device management. The fact that this is included in Office 365 is a no-brainer. If you own 365 today, at a minimum you should be turning on this functionality. What does it do? Well, the basic steps are pretty simple. In order to access data that's contained within Office 365, any device has to be enrolled in the system and it needs to be healthy. Assuming those two steps have been met, that it's been enrolled and that it's a healthy device, it can access the data without any issue. Ultimately, if it falls out of compliance, if it's no longer healthy, if someone roots it or jailbreaks it or removes some of that security, then it will no longer be allowed to access the data that's contained within it, whether that's email or documents or what have you. And so it's self-service to the end user, but it also allows you to set policies that get very granular on what you can and cannot access. What about the devices themselves? So this is when it moves into the device management side of the coin. So before you even enroll a device, you can say, do these devices need to have encryption? Do they need to have a password set on them, a PIN of some sort? What does that PIN look like? How complex does it need to be? How long do you have to wait while the device is unattended before it locks itself? What's the password history? Can you root it or jailbreak the device? All of these items can be controlled by your IT team before they deploy these policies to any specific devices that are out there in the field. And this ultimately is what drives up the reporting component, and I'll show you an example of that in a minute, whereby you can actually see of the 100 or 1,000 or 2,000 devices that you have that you're managing. Keep in mind, most people tend to have 3 or 4 different devices. Of all those devices that you're managing, which ones are in compliance, which ones are not in compliance, and which ones, are things you need to call people out about and try and support them more effectively. The other pillar that I mentioned earlier, Selective Wipe, is really driving towards that goal, not only of self-service, but also of giving people the confidence to enroll their device in the first place in the system. You can, if you want to, continue to run ActiveSync at the same time that you're running mobile device management for 365. The big advantage that we see of turning on Selective Wipe is it gives you a clear argument to go to your staff and say, look, you no longer are forced to have everything lost when your device is removed. Because of this, we're going to turn on Selective Wipe. You guys will have the ability to know that if we need to wipe your device, it's only going to pull off the corporate data. But the flip side is we need to turn off ActiveSync because we don't want people to have their devices wiped unintentionally. And we also want to make sure that people fit with our new compliance policies, and ActiveSync doesn't allow us to do that. So when you look at Selective Wipe, I always view it as a big benefit to staff because the number one blocker for MDM projects over the years has always been that people don't want to have their device managed because they're worried about what will happen if IT makes a mistake and wipes the device. Now, how does that differ from mobile application management? So these are the features that you don't get with MDM for 365. These are the ones that if you need this level of functionality, you probably want to go straight to either Microsoft Intune or their suite, the Enterprise Mobility Suite, that provides you with some additional control beyond that. What does that look like? And if any of these things resonate with your organization, you should probably be having a conversation with us about Intune rather than a conversation around MDM for Office 365, which brings me to a critical point, which is that at the moment, MDM for Office 365 is being rolled out in all the tenancies that actively have Office 365 today. There isn't today an upgrade path to go from MDM to Microsoft Intune. Now, ultimately, the service powers them both. So if you're using MDM for Office 365 under the covers, you're actually using Microsoft Intune. You're just not logging into the Intune console and making changes in the Intune portal. Those changes are being made through the Office 365 portal and console, but ultimately is spinning up an instance of Microsoft Intune. In the future, we anticipate that Microsoft will have some sort of upgrade mechanism to allow customers to shift from MDM for 365 up to Microsoft Intune. But today, if you're looking for these level of features, I would say you probably need to start with Microsoft Intune. What are those features? Well, you have the ability to protect content through secure viewing. There's a special app that comes with Microsoft Intune called the Managed Browser. You have other apps that are locked down by default. You have the ability to prevent data from moving between corporate managed apps and non-managed apps, down to even very granular controls, such as you can prevent someone from cutting and pasting from a corporate app into a personal app, and really protect your boundary at this point. It's still leveraging the Selective Wipe capabilities that are found in the base product, so if you do pull off this device, it's only going to lose the corporate data, corporate email, etc. But it gives you a little bit more control over the types of applications that are in that corporate container. And we see this all the time with customers. As soon as they start to manage their devices and they've got email working, and they've got the ability to say that these devices are secure, their next question is, well, this is great, I love this, but is there anything else that I can do? And that's really where something like Intune provides additional value, because you can push out to all of those individual devices Wi-Fi passwords. You can push out VPN connections. You can actually bulk enroll 50 or 100 or 200 devices at once, and actually provision applications and push them out to those devices. That may not be something you're doing today. It may be something that may be 6 or 12 months off. But if those are things that you want to be doing, then I think Intune is a better fit for you than the MDM for 365 solution. And ultimately, the way that ends up working, and I'm going to show off what this looks like on the MDM side in a second, but the way that works from a app management perspective is when people try to connect into their own services with Intune, it effectively forces them to enroll. Once they enroll, any devices or data that they try to move between their corporate apps and their personal apps just gets denied. It just says, hey, you can't cut and paste this. You can't save this document in a personal consumer-grade service, but you can save it in your corporate apps. So it effectively allows people to move data between all the stuff that you have control over, and prevents them from moving it into cloud services or SaaS services that you're not going to have the ability to control. So it keeps things secure without forcing your staff to learn a completely different set of applications. None of the applications that I'm highlighting here are apps that people would have any difficulty using, because they're all built by the independent software vendors themselves. Microsoft is not going out and rewriting a new version of the Kindle app or a new version of Word just for this Intune product. It's just using the ones that are native to the company. So I'm happy to provide this feature comparison chart to everyone who's interested at the end of the call. It's just a good kind of helpful one-page summary of when you would move from ActiveSync to MDM for 365 all the way up to full-blown Intune. And like I said, at the moment, because there isn't a true migration path between MDM and Intune, we would recommend that if you have any of those requirements in that bottom area, the bottom right area, that you feel like are critical to your business, that we would have you start out with Intune. But let's dive into what that looks like from a MDM for 365. It's great that Intune can go above and beyond the base platform, but let's see what's in the base platform. So I mentioned earlier that there are reporting functions to allow you to see which ones are in compliance and which ones are not. And that can be tied down to even specific staff members at your organization. You could see at the drop of a hat, hey, this is the office, whether it's a branch office or a group of individuals, these are the people who are not in compliance with their policies. And you can, if you want to, have that remediated automatically, or you can just be recording it. You can say, hey, look, it's useful to know before we start putting in place more onerous security policies that these are the people who are probably going to fall into that violation area just before we even get ready to roll that out. So I'm going to show off what device enrollment looks like on a couple of different platforms so that you guys can see what this looks like from the end user perspective. I think it's important to recognize that, again, all of these technologies are useless if you can't get your staff to start adopting them and using them. And the goal here is to empower people to be able to do more than they otherwise would be able to do if they were just running their regular active sync connection back into your environment. So let's start this out. And I'm going to start by showing off what it looks like on an iPad. I've got some shots here, and I've got a couple of different target ones. So if you guys aren't in an iPad shop or a Windows shop or what have you, it does look relatively similar across the different platforms once we get into it. So what does that process look like? Well, much the same way that you would add email or documents today. You're going to start by going into your settings bar of your iPad, and you're going to be able to say, hey, let's set up a new mail account. You know, I need access to the mail in my environment. All of this should be pretty standard. You know, it's simple enough that people do it every single day. They go ahead and add an account. You're going to choose where that account is coming from. Go ahead and log in with their credentials. So to this point, there really hasn't been any change in how that provisioning process works. And I think most of us at the organizations we work for don't have a huge issue with people self-enrolling their devices via ActiveSync into the corporate exchange system. That's something that almost everyone can handle. Once that process takes place, go ahead and save that out, and it will add that information within. Now here's where things start to get a little bit different. So this is where that process would typically have ended in the past, with just adding the email address and not doing anything else. The big difference now is that when I go back into my mail application, at the moment I won't see any mail. The only thing that I will see, and this is true regardless of the platform you're on, is an email saying, hey, this device is not enrolled. And because it's not enrolled, you're not going to be able to get access to the email that you need to be able to access, which obviously is why you're going in there in the first place. Now, you'll notice if this is a new person, brand new, then they're just going to get the message. If they already have an existing connection, let's imagine they're using ActiveSync today, and you turn on this policy and put it in place. What you can do is, within 24 hours of that message, of the policy being changed, it's going to actually show up and say, hey, we built the policy, you need to get in alignment with it. So it gives you a little bit of a leeway to actually communicate that to individuals after you put the policy in place. So once you open it up, it gives you two different things you need to do. You need to enroll the device, and then you need to make sure that it's compliant to be able to have it able to check your email. So the first item is just enrolling the device. And again, so far, all of this is stuff that normally individuals would just handle themselves. The one-click enroll device takes you to your company store. If it's an Apple device, you're obviously going to go to Apple's store. If it's an Android device, you're going to go to Google Store. If it's a Microsoft device, you're going to go to the Windows Store. And each of those stores has a free application called the Intune Company Portal app. So this is what the app looks like. Obviously, based on the screen real estate that you have, it may look a little bit different. Once you open that application up, it's going to fire up the whole Company Portal app. And this app is where you can actually consume applications, enroll devices, manage things yourself from a self-service perspective without needing IT. So this particular application is something that's available on a website. It's available on an app. There are lots of different ways to get into it and manage it. And the first thing you need to do before you do anything else is, of course, enroll your device. So I've chosen to enroll this particular device. Once within the environment, it'll begin to add it. And once it finishes that enrollment, it'll push down what's known as a management profile, if you're using an iOS device, onto the device itself. So that management profile is actually what's controlling your access as an administrator into that particular item. So if I were to go into my settings, I'd always be able to see that managed profile living there. And it makes sure that it's healthy and then it's going to meet the standards that I set up. So I'm going to go ahead and flip to what happens after a management portal is installed. So it'll give me a quick link to say, hey, go ahead and install this. Once I've done that, it'll be in there. It'll actually build a specific certificate key for the device. And that's it. Now the device is fully managed by Intune. It'll show up within the console. As if I, as an IT administrator, want to see that device, I can go in there and start to look at it. Typically takes about 10 to 15 minutes to fully do the first poll, but within 10 minutes I should be able to see all of that information, and immediately from the end user's perspective they should be able to start consuming the content that they needed. So in this particular case, the whole point of this was to get mail. I'm going to go back into the mail, but the first thing I notice before I do anything else is that management profile has asked me to put in a passcode. So simply by installing the company portal, the security settings that we set up said we want to encrypt the device and we want to put in a PIN code. So once I do that, it'll say, hey, you need to generate some form of passcode to make this thing work. So I'll go ahead and enter a passcode, re-enter it, make sure I know what it is, and boom, I'm now protected. Each time that I'm going to unlock and lock the device, I've now got a PIN code to deal with, but I can be safe and secure that the device is encrypted, and that if anyone were maliciously trying to get access to the device, that they would not be able to do so. So flip back into my email, and I'm going to have access to that. Now, it extends beyond email. The ability to check and receive email is kind of a base level of being able to do that, but it also goes into the documents themselves. So let's walk through this scenario. Instead of doing the email, I'm actually going to open up my OneDrive app here and access corporate documents. Same kind of experience, fire up OneDrive. The first thing it will ask me to do is to sign in. It'll say, hey, I noticed that you're trying to get in here, but before you do anything, you need to obviously sign into your account. It'll ask for my credentials. Again, nothing crazy so far. And this is the big difference. So with the application now, instead of just punching me through after I put in my credentials, it'll say, hey, I noticed that this device isn't enrolled. In order to get access to your documents on OneDrive for Business, you're going to need to put in this device into enrollment. So this is assuming, again, we're on a separate device rather than the one that we just configured. What does that look like from a phone client? Well, obviously, you got a lot less space to control. I'm using a Windows phone here as an example, but it's still the basic framework, whether you're accessing it on a tablet or a phone. You're going to go into settings, you're going to choose your email accounts, you're going to add a new email account, put that in there. Once you put it in, open up your email account. At that point, it'll give you exactly the same message that it gave you on the iOS device. A message that says you need to enroll your device, and then once you've enrolled, you need to activate it. So I can go through and choose to enroll my device. In this case, because I'm on a Windows device, it's going to take me to the company portal, which will then push me over to the new workplace controls within the Windows Phone ecosystem. Same deal as before. I have to put in my corporate credentials. Once I've signed in, I can add this into my company account. And that's it. I'm now enrolled from that perspective, and it will start to push down items within my environment. In this particular case, I do have to select the item that says click here to activate. Once I've done that, everything has been generated, and I can begin to consume all of the emails that I would otherwise. So all of these different options are self-service designed from the start so that individuals aren't going to have to go to their IT teams and say, hey, how do I do this? Every step of the way, it gives you clear instructions for what you need to do, and there's not a lot of button clicking other than clicking sign in that you need to do through the part of the process. Once you do sign in, there's really nothing else for you to do. I mean, this device, now that it's fully managed and enrolled, I have access to all of the email that I need, so I'm not really going to need to ever reach back out to the IT team to move forward. So if all you need is access to your email and access to documents and to make sure that your devices have that level of policy compliance and settings, then this is probably what you're going to leverage when you turn on MDM for Office 365. It doesn't need to be more complex than that. But there are some scenarios where you will need to do more. And that's where you really want to consider whether MDM for 365 is the best option, or whether you need to move to something like Microsoft Intune to provide some additional control. So I'll give you some examples of what that conditional items look like beyond the MDM stack to show you the Intune side of the coin. And this should be the decision point at which you make. Hey, is this a nice to have and I could wait 6 months, or is it something that I need to have and I need to go all the way up to Microsoft Intune to begin with? So to start with, again, we're going to assume that that this device has been enrolled in the system and it's using a managed application. So in the Intune side of the world, anything that's managed is something the IT team controls. So I've got to put in my PIN to start using my corporate Outlook. This is going to bring up OWA, and I'm just using an iPad again as an example. I've got a couple of different applications here that are managed applications. These are all first-party applications. There's no difference between these and the other apps that exist within the iOS store right now. I've got my corporate email up here. It's designated a corporate app where someone has sent me an Excel attachment. So I'll go ahead and open up that Excel attachment. Because Excel is a managed application, it's going to prompt me, hey, what kind of PIN do you have to be able to get in and start using this device? And then it'll open up the attachment itself. Now again, at this stage, there's no difference in the UI from the regular Excel application that anyone can go out and purchase on the Apple Store today. So you're not having to go back and train your staff members, hey, when you need to do this, but it needs to be the secure corporate version, it's different. In many ways, you just tell them to continue using the devices they normally would. In this case, I'm editing some information about downloads by a country. Let me go ahead and select that information. Once I've got that there, I'm going to actually flip over and provide this information to some of my colleagues. But before I do that, I'm going to try and put it into a non-governed application. So all of the items here, these are all my corporate apps that I've got controlled, but I've also got all the regular ones that are completely personal ones. Things like notes or maps or my photo booth. Those are items that the corporate IT team didn't put together. These are just things that I went out and bought on my own. So if I try to go into Notes, which is an unmanaged application, and press paste, it's just not going to let me do it. It'll just block me from doing that. So any types of data that are contained within that corporate enclosure are effectively ring-fenced and prevented from transferring to those other non-managed applications. So you can be confident that whether it's an attachment or even an email itself, you're not going to have people cutting and pasting back into those unmanaged apps. You can only keep it within your corporate apps. So I've still got that data that I cut and pasted from that Excel document. I can go bring up the corporate version of Word and paste it in. So again, just by choosing the applications that you have, you can get to the point that you can decide which ones are useful for you to be able to be in. Now in this particular case, as an end user, I might not even be aware of the fact that I was able to cut and paste into this application. So it again goes back to that user-focused approach. If I don't know that something's a corporate app, I don't really need to be trained on any different approach. It'll just prevent me automatically from pasting it in a personal app. So I don't have to be, adhering to some sort of guidelines or remembering every time what I can and cannot do. It'll just prevent me from doing the things I shouldn't do, and it'll allow me to do the things that I should do. So in this case, it allows me to paste this into the Word document because Word is a managed application. So great, I've got my Word document up. I need to do a little bit more work because I've got a URL that I want to look up that contains some more information. I'm going to go ahead and grab this URL and cut and paste this so that I can go take a look at it. Now remember, because it's a managed application, I can't just cut and paste this into a unmanaged web browser. I need to actually have a corporate controlled web browser. So that's where we get into what the corporate controlled web browser experience looks like, which again, just another app first-party app on the desktop that I can. Much like the other ones, it's going to ask me to sign in to make sure that I'm secure. But once I've done that, I'm going to get into the actual managed browser itself. So I'm on the iPad again. It's just like any other web browser. The only difference is because we've determined that it's managed, I can cut and paste information and move data between it without having to think, hey, is this okay or not? The other big difference between the managed browser and your regular personal set of browsers is that the managed browser allows you as an IT organization to both whitelist and blacklist particular sites that you can go to. So even though this is my personal device, and I can go to any site that I want to on the internet on my own browser, for this particular managed browser that controls company access, it's going to be a little bit more locked down and limited in the places that I can go. So I'm going to start by pasting in that particular screen that I wanted to go to. It'll let me know, hey, you tried to go to this block.com address. You cannot get into it. If you want to get into it, you really need to reach out to your IT team. And thus, again, it can prevent that corporate data from bleeding into websites that it should not be. When you think about the scenario that I described before, where it was preventing cutting and pasting data from a managed application into an unmanaged application, by including the internet in this, it makes it really powerful because a lot of your individuals might be using alternative software as a service websites to unbeknownst to you, be uploading data and copying data into it. And so by having the managed browser be part of this suite, you can actually prevent people from going to those sites that they shouldn't be going to while still allowing them to do their job. You're not preventing them from browsing the internet. You're just saying, hey, don't upload it into that personal sketchy file system that you have. And of course, you can allow other ones to be whitelisted and say, hey, this will always be good regardless of where you need to go. So I wanted to give a quick recap on what the differences are between the MDM solution and the Microsoft Intune. Again, if all you need to do is push out conditional access to email and documents, that's a key win with MDM for 365. It gives you the ability to manage all those devices, to set basic security policies and check up on their access and to see how well they're doing from a reporting perspective. And it also gives you the ability to selectively pull off all of the corporate data without having any of your personal data swept up in it. And this is actually a big differentiator with the Intune platform itself. If you do elect to go to the full Intune solution, you can designate devices as either corporate provided or personal provided. If it's a corporate provided device, then you can inventory everything on it. You can inventory the software, you can inventory the hardware, you can look at everything. If it's a personal device and you're using Microsoft Intune, then it'll actually only do an inventory of the corporate controlled software and the underlying hardware. It won't ever look at your own personal software, which goes back to the value proposition here for your staff, which is that IT has a lot of fires that they need to fight. Checking out what people are installing on their iPad or on their Galaxy Tab or on their personal Surface, that's not something that they need to be doing, and they're not going to be doing that. And with a solution like Mobile Device Management for 365 or Microsoft Intune, you have the ability to make that clear that that's not the purpose of this deployment, and that's not what IT is focused on. Now, if you do need to have true application management, if you do need to be able to prevent people from cutting and pasting between certain apps, if you want to be able to push out wireless access passwords to individual devices, if you want to start to manage your desktops and your items that are bigger than mobile devices. So as you guys may know, Microsoft is moving very aggressively to ensure that not only with Windows 8, but also with the next version of their operating, Windows 10, that all of the devices that are out there, not just mobile devices, but things like laptops and tablets and even desktops, can be managed from an MDM capacity. If you're interested in that, that's a great quality to be going for. It's something that you'll likely need to have the full version of Microsoft Intune in order to take advantage of it. So most of the customers that we talk to today if they don't already own Intune, we say at a minimum you should turn on MDM for Office 365, because these features, the ability to have conditional access and device management and selective wipe, these are great features. They're included in the cost of 365, so if you're not using them today, you're simply not using the most, getting the most value out of your service. Once you have those features, then you can evaluate whether or not it might be worthwhile to move up to something like Microsoft Intune if you want something more robust. If you already have an existing mobile device management service that you're working with, you might want to consider just going to Intune right out of the gate, because the biggest advantage of MDM for 365 is the fact that it's included in the cost of 365. It's not that it's better than Intune in any capacity. It's using Intune. It's just a stripped down version of Intune. So I wanted to leave a little bit of time near the end of the session to ensure that if you guys had questions, that you would be able to ask them. This service is rolling out over the next 1 to 2 months to all the existing tenants in 365. Much like any of the new features in 365, sometimes early adopters who just purchased the service today may be a little bit ahead of someone who's been on the service for 2 to 3 years. But within the next month and a half, we anticipate that all of our existing customers who are on 365 will be able to start taking advantage of this if they're interested. With that, Ryan, I'd like to turn it over and see if there are any questions from the audience.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat window right now, Reed. Let me give people another 10, 15, 20 seconds to punch in a question if they have anything they'd like to ask. I'm also going to go ahead and unmute in case anyone just wants to speak up.
Yeah, so Matt, if you're referring to website access in terms of on the device itself, that's done through that managed browser. So if you want to have that level of control, you need to go up to the full version of Microsoft Intune. And if you are using that managed browser, it's controlled through the Intune portal, the control portal itself, to be able to do that. So you set up, and this is somewhat similar if you've leveraged group policy or System Center Configuration Manager in the past. You effectively build up a series of policies and then push those policies out to different devices. So if you have a number of people who are working in the marketing group, you might have a policy that only applies to those marketing individuals, or you might have a policy for your HR team or finance team. And then that policy would go out to the managed browser, and the managed browser would, whether you're whitelisting or blacklisting, control that access. It wouldn't, and I think it's important to note, it wouldn't impact your ability to go to other sites on your personal browser within the environment. So that functionality is purely one of the Intune stack, and I actually have not used that capability myself. We could certainly get you an answer as to whether there are default ones. The way that the Intune policies typically work is that they come with a pre-built set of kind of default policies that you turn on, and then you tweak them from there. But we could certainly work with you to determine whether that gives you the pre-built ones that you want. And one of the things that I didn't mention before, but that is important, is that from the Intune side of the coin, we're able to provide any organization with trials of Intune. So if you're interested in seeing the full feature set of Intune, we can always get you a trial so that you can turn it on and light it up and see if it does what you need it to do. That's probably the best way, I would argue, to determine whether or not the functionality of MDM for 365 is going to be robust enough for you, is to actually see what the full version of Intune will do, and then decide whether that's nice to have or just simply something that would be useful in the future but isn't something you want to deal with right now. And those trials typically last for at least 30 days, so you have plenty of time to kick the tires on it and decide whether it's right for you. And if it is something that you feel like is a good match, then it's easy to convert that trial to a full version of Intune. And if you decide that in fact you'd rather just go with MDM for Office 365, you can just spin down the trial and get and just use the MDM functionality. But I will make a note to get you that information on the default.
Okay, great. Unless anyone has any more questions, I think it makes sense to go ahead and wrap up. If anyone does have any follow-ups, whether it's with regards to the trial that Reed was just referring to, general questions, what have you, please feel free to reach out to us. You can email us at info@newsignature.com at any time. You are also more than welcome to reach out to me directly, rO'Connell@newsignature.com. I just dropped both of those email addresses into the chat window. I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording. Thank you once again, everyone, for joining us today. Our next webinar will be on April 28th from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern, and we're actually giving Reed a break. We are going to cover Microsoft Dynamics marketing, and we'll have a couple of our internal experts present on that, Peter Schmidt and Jeremy Foote, a couple of our marketing and CRM people. So if you guys have any interest in that, please also make sure to check out the webinar on our website and register well in advance. Thank you so much, everyone, and thanks, Reed, for presenting today.
No, thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Take care.